Okay, welcome to Cabinet on the Monday, the 11th of October. It's 2 o'clock. I remind you this is a remote meeting, which is streamed live and will be recorded for future viewing. Can I first of all look for any apologies for absence? And looking around me, I see there are none. Next item is an item of the minutes. Can I have your approval of the previous minutes, please?
And I'll formally second, Leader.
Thank you very much. Next item is to receive any declarations of interest, if there are any, and I don't believe that there are. In that case, we will go straight into the agenda. The first item is a reference from Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee. Refers to the Vale Glamorgan Public Service Board annual report. If you recall, it came to Cabinet on the 19th of July. Then it was presented to Corporate Performance and Resources on the 22nd of September. It was carried out using a Microsoft SWAY report, not a AWAY report, as it says in the paperwork, which contained a series of case studies that focused on the PSB's activities as well as the evidence base for the wellbeing assessment. So during that conversation, there was reference made to the strengthening of the relationship with town and community councils, and that was continuing, and that there was a subsequent meeting will be held where a programme of work focusing on issues of mutual interest will be explored. For example, I don't know, age-friendly status and climate change, it says in the report here. Clearly, since July, some work has continued on the wellbeing assessment, and that was going to be reported to the PSB prior to the local government elections in May 2022. In terms of the SWAY report, there was also a response, and the response survey was quite good. And now they're looking to run a series of workshops with the PSB partners over the next few months ahead of publishing the draft wellbeing assessment, as I said, later in the autumn. And they will be bringing that assessment to the Corporate Performance and Resources Committee as part of the consultation process as the lead committee. One of the things that happened during that meeting was that although they noted the situation, they wondered why the scrutiny corporate performance was the only committee it was going to. In essence, it's a lead committee for it, and they was wondering whether or not it could be extended to the other scrutiny committees, like, for example, a finance, budget and things are concerned. They go to all of them. It comes back to corporate performance resources as the lead committee itself, and that is one of the requests that we're going to be had. There was also a question about whether the evaluation and impact of the work had been assessed, and clearly, as we all know, it does go to other committees, so it does go to each of the committee in terms of the PSB work through the quarterly performance reporting. During our meeting, obviously, the chair referred to the PSB's 4 priority work streams, which you can see within your report. And again, as I said, they asked whether or not the reports could be taken to each of the scrutiny committees, which, to be fair, is reasonable. Nothing to stop it. And they asked us if we would recommend that the 4 priority work streams to be reported and referred to their respective scrutiny committees as part of the committee's work plans. I think that's eminently sensible, but I would also add that therefore anything that they want to put forward in terms of references should go to the scrutiny corporate performance as the lead committee, and then they can pass those on to us in the same sort of way as we do the budget. So as far as a very long-winded explanation of a 2-page report, but it gives you the essence of people being interested in the fact that we have to look at the 4 priorities, and it is eminently sensible that it goes to each of them, but we use corporate performance as a lead committee, and I hope that everybody sees that as quite sensible, and everybody agrees it. So I'll formally move that. So everybody
Formally second.
Thank you. Looks like everybody agrees. Okay, thank you very much. The next item is the revenue monitoring for the period 1st of April to the 31st of August. Obviously, the revenue position continues to be challenging because of the pandemic, primarily because of also the situation that we're currently in. obviously the pandemic has an impact on everything that's going on. Our expenditure, we've had additional expenditure, and we've had to find some of the issues during that time. There's obviously been during this year some efficiency targets of £500,000, and they've been set, and services are working towards their targets. However, they may not all be fully achieved, and there's some issues which we also know are remaining from saving targets from previous years. You know, in fairness, COVID has had a marked effect on everything that we do. There are also adverse variances being projected in some of the services, and you can see that later in the report, and they will be using reserves in order to resolve those issues. One of the good things about this clearly is the Welsh Government have been supporting us through the pandemic, and the table on the report shows the amount of money that we've had, about £4.8 million to date from April to August. Some items are on hold in relation to free school meals, but I think that's a query across Wales in the way that people are paid them out, and also some of the social services and school staffing issues. So they are still on hold, but clearly we've had a lot of grant given to us over the last couple of years, this year as well as last year. In terms of the service areas, you can see that in the report, and I'm not going to go through them, that there are a breakdown of each of the service areas, and there are use of unplanned reserves in places like social services and environmental housing. So clearly the amount of work is there, but as I said, there is a detailed report within it, and I'm not going to go through that. In terms of the efficiency targets, then they are still trying to be brought together, and that Appendix 1 is a statement detailing all the saving targets for 21-22, and each target has been given a RAG status, so either green, amber, or red. Clearly, we've got those aspects to continue for the year. It is kind of halfway through the year, so there is a long way to go yet. So quite frankly, all I'm going to do is ask it if anybody's got any comments in relation to their own areas or not, that the position with regard to the 21-22 revenue budget be noted, and that this report be referred to corporate performance and resources for their consideration. But it is a warts and all report. It tells you everything, and it goes into great detail in each of the service areas. So I don't know if anybody's got any comments.
Not except to formally second, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. In that case, I will go on to the next report, which is the capital monitoring report for the 1st of April to the 31st of August again. Quite simply, the report provides an update on the progress of the capital programme for the period, and details are shown in Appendix 1. It also sets out any requests and changes for 21-22 and the future year's capital programme. And again, if you look at the report, there are several references. One is that we note the progress made in the capital programme. That two, that we refer this report to Corporate Performance and Resources Committee for consideration, and that we also use the notes. We note the use of delegated authority, and there are seven of them listed within recommendation 3. That we also note the use of emergency powers in relation to those items which are listed, and there are 25 of them. Perhaps I should say, in terms of the ones of the delegated authority, there were things like, for example, visible service highway improvements, which I'm sure everybody would be really happy to see, and also continuing with the Building Strong Communities Fund. In terms of the emergency powers, there were 25 of them listed, I think, but they cover things like the resource recovery facility for the waste transfer station, which we need to get on with. Also, I'm happy to say that we were prepared to proceed with the Berthin and Peterson Super ED 20 mile an hour schemes, and I think that is something that the residents and those in the area required urgently in some respects. But also the other one, which has been on the cards for a long time, and something we needed to do, was the residential parking schemes, which again have been something which we needed to get on with, and have been considered favourable, I think. The fifth recommendation is that we approve the changes to the programme and future capital programmes, and they're listed. There are 11 of them listed in recommendation 5, but there are things like the Band B programmes and carry forwards, HRA individual schemes and common paths. They're moving forward, and things like dimming of street lighting and fitting of LED lamps. And again, it's something which we've been trying to do for a long time. There are some new schemes listed in there. For example, the play area in Stanwell Ward, and also the Barry Island and Cosmoston toilets, and that's to increase the scheme by £10,000 to be funded from contributions from the Disabled Facilities Grant Revenue Budget in private housing. As I said, there is a list and an appendix at Appendix 1. I would just simply formally move the recommendations, unless anybody wants to pick up any of the recommendations in there, particularly those ones that I've mentioned in terms of recommendations 3 to 5. Liz.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, it's one of those strange things when we look at revenue and capital monitoring, and so in some ways with revenue we say, well, you know, we're in the first quarter, we can note, but finding trends is not is too difficult at that time. But in the first quarter, in terms of capital, it's quite amazing to see just how fast our officers sort of get off the blocks, because they can't start putting out tenders or inviting bids for tenders. They can't start awarding contracts, etc., until we've signed off the budget in March. And from that point, if you actually look at all the stuff, if you look at the appendix, all the stuff that they actually put out the contracts, awarded the contracts primarily to local businesses, and the work has been done, mainly in schools over the summer holidays. It's a fantastic effort, and it's year on year, but it's millions. We know that obviously we've got the Band B programme, which is a multi-million-pound programme, but we don't stop maintaining our other schools, and specifically, for anybody in Penarth would see the Victorian schools that we've got here, that they're not left behind. And I was in Cogan Primary the other day, and the stonework that's been done there is absolutely fabulous. So that's a really good piece of work. So that was really excellent. And it would be remiss of me to say, I am so pleased that the play area off St David's Crescent is now going to be renewed. It's been up towards the top of the priority list, because obviously we work on a strict priority list in terms of condition of play areas. It's been up towards that priority list for so long, and it will mean such an amount to the local community over there. So as I said, huge thanks to all our education staff and to the people who will be taking forward the play area from me, and very happy to second the report or the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Catherine.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to talk really in relation to my portfolio, and just to say it's really good news that we've been able to secure the capital funding required for the jobs that are ongoing in relation to all of our leisure centres, whether it's Cambridge Roof or the updating of Barry Leisure Centre to complete the area about removing the slide, so we can create that into a nice new outdoor area for all of the people that fail to use. So yeah, it's really reassuring. So I just wanted to comment on that and make sure that everyone knows that we're doing as much as we can for all of our leisure facilities.
Well, yeah, indeed, and it does sound sometimes like we use delegated authority in emergency powers, but that's because we get tenders in and we just got to get it done. Because if you don't, then you're going to have problems. And lots of people are having problems at the moment with increasing costs and things. So as soon as we get the tender in, let's just get it done. And particularly as Liz mentioned, in terms of schools, we need to do them when the children are not there. So we need to do them quickly and efficiently. So okay, good. So you've had the recommendations, and you're happy with that, and they've been seconded. Peter.
Leader, sorry to interject. Can I just add one other comment? That is that we are finding that because of perhaps supply chain difficulties, and even staffing shortages, any delay risks, estimates and tenders and prices altering, and they're only going in one direction. And I do hope the council and other members of the council appreciate that extra pressure.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's why I mentioned it, because it's something which you got to tender in. Let's get on with it. If we can do it now, we do it now. So I've got to congratulate the officers, the amount of work that they put in to get this through. Okay, good. Thank you. I'll go to the next item, which is item 7, which is housekeeping report more than anything else, and it's in relation to the Cabinet Quarterly Work Programme. What it does do is seek approval of any comments in respect to the progress of updates for the quarter July to September, and also seeks Cabinet approval to update the Cabinet Quarterly Work Programme from October to December. So the recommendations quite simply are that the updates to the Cabinet Programme for July to September at Appendix 1 be agreed, and 2, that the Cabinet Quarterly Work Programme October to December 21 attached to Appendix 2 be endorsed. And it's quite interesting to see that we are doing quite well in terms of the progress of the reports that we want to come through. As I said, it's a housekeeping report. It shows where we are, where we've been, what we've done, and what we intend to do for the next quarter. So I'm just going to formally move it, if that's okay with you. Does anybody wants to raise anything that's on there? Nope.
Just to formally second, Leader. I was muted.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is item 8, and this is a consultation on the Welsh Government's LGBTQ+ action plan for Wales. What it does do is summarise the key aspects of the Wales Government draft action plan, and brings the attention to Cabinet a draft response to the consultation on this plan, which is at Appendix A. That response outlines the draft proposals for the LGBTQ action plan for Wales, with many actions relevant to local authorities, and that's really important. We've been asked for comments from offices across the council, as well as GLAM, our LGBTQ network, and Dilwys, and our minority staff network. All those responses have been incorporated into the draft response for consultation. So what this simply does is seeks Cabinet's consideration and approval of the draft as a basis for referring to Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee to seek that committee's views before it's finalised. And clearly the consultation period ends on the 22nd of October. So we need to do things in terms of this. It does talk about, the plan talks about developing to help improve lives of LGBTQ people, challenging discrimination, creating society where LGBTQ people are safe to live and be themselves. It has 6 overarching things which are covered in paragraph 2.3. It also has 58 actions across those 6 overarching aims, and with 7 policy themes. Many of them will be undertaken by Welsh Government, but they will be looking to see how they can work with and influence not only UK government, and how they will work with people like the police, the local authorities, and other organisations to provide a stronger framework in which people can improve their lives. There's much for us local authorities to do. This report outlines the work that needs to be involved, some of which are already underway, but others aspects will need to be put in place to develop it further. It talks in detail about human rights recognition, about ensuring LGBTQ people's safety. It talks about homes and communities and support and community groups and organisations for those individuals. Improving health outcomes. Talks about education in terms of delivering a curriculum. Talks about the workplace and having a single approach to working and training resources, and they should be developed. And also it talks about the responses of COVID-19 and the effect that it's had on people during the lockdown. So this is a draft response. It is going to the Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee. So I'm going to move the recommendations that Cabinet notes the content of the report at Appendix A. In fact, I think we should endorse it, rather than note it. We should endorse it and approve it, subject to any comments from Learning and Culture. So if we could change that as a recommendation, that we endorse and approve the contents of the report, subject to any comments from Learning and Culture. Probably gone ahead of myself here, haven't I? The Cabinet considers, endorses the draft consultation response as described in Appendix A, subject to comments. 3, that the Cabinet refers this report to Learning and Scrutiny Committee for comment, and also seeks the views of the Equality Champion and the LGBTQ plus champion on this report. The 4, that subject to recommendation 3, and I think is the important bit really, Cabinet delegates authority to the head of policy and business transformation in consultation with the leader to consider any views received, and if necessary and appropriate, revise this and submit the Council's response. And 5, that subject to recommendation 3 and 4, the final response to Welsh Government, if amended, forms that resolved by Cabinet in pursuance of recommendation to be circulated to all members for information. So quite clearly, this is a draft, we endorse it, goes to the scrutiny, they got any comments, it gives an authority for us to alter it and then send it in, and all members will then have a copy. Liz.
Thank you, Leader. I think this is a comprehensive and insightful response to this consultation. It's obvious that our staff have taken a lot of time thinking about it and have added value to the consultation questions. I personally look forward to a full discussion of this at Learning and Culture Scrutiny later this week, and obviously I'll be there to participate. I'm delighted to second this report, or to the recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Liz. See what comes out of scrutiny, but otherwise we agree with what we have before us. Yes. Okay, all agreed. Thank you very much. Next item is item 8, which is a business rates discretionary hardship relief report. This is a part 1 report. I will say something very briefly about it. The report does request Cabinet to consider an appeal against the decision to refuse the award of discretionary hardship business rates relief for a business in the Vale of Glamorgan. In accordance with Section 49 of the Local Government Finance Act 1988, the Council has discretion to remit all or part of the rates payable where a ratepayer would sustain hardship if the authority refused the application, and where it is reasonable to do so, having regard to the interests of local council taxpayers. The decision to award hardship relief is delegated to the head of finance in consultation with the leader, and each application for hardship relief is considered on its individual merits. This appeal relates to an application for the period 1st of April 2019 to 31st of March 2020, and again for the period 1st of April 2020 to the 9th of February 2021. It was decided not to award hardship relief in this instance, and this decision has been challenged by the business owner, which is a right. Therefore, the details of the appeal and the financial implications are detailed in a Part 2 report later on this agenda. It is recommended that Cabinet notes the contents of this report under Part 1 with a view to taking a decision on the appeal as detailed within Part 2 of the report of the agenda. And I would say that we did have a further item of correspondence from the business, which we will take under Part 2. So I'm going to move that, as I say, that we note the contents of the report with the reviewer taking the decision under Part 2 later in this agenda. Is that okay? Agreed?
Yes, formally seconded.
Yeah, thank you. Right, next item is item 10, which is the annual delivery plan monitoring report for the Q1 performance of 21-22. As usual, there's a bit of housekeeping in some respects because it tells us where we currently are. The performance represents our progress at Q1 towards achieving the annual delivery plan, and also our commitments to the corporate and wellbeing objectives. we have made a positive progress. Overall, the status is green. All 4 corporate wellbeing objectives were attributed green performance status for Q1, which is good news. And this is positive given obviously the ongoing challenges we have with the pandemic. The 97%, which is quite good when you think about it, of planned activities in our annual delivery plan have been attributed a green performance. 1% attributed amber, and 2%, which is 7, a red status. The 2 that were directly that were red were a direct result of the pandemic, which isn't surprising, to be honest. And obviously progress in relation to the recovery has been reported to members. Committees have focused and highlighted issues pertinent to each of their committee within the remit, and I'll continue for the rest of the year. And members will continue to have an oversight of the recovery. Interestingly, of the 42 quarterly performance measures aligned to the corporate wellbeing objectives that was reported, there were 34 measures. The data was reported for 34 of those. 50% are green, 17% are amber, 33%, which 11 are red. So there are things that we need to do. Data was available for 8 quarterly measures due to the impact of the pandemic. It was unavailable, I should say, for 8 quarterly measures due to the pandemic. But the 11 measures attributed to red, again, have been contributed by the pandemic. So what this seeks to do is to propose the remedial actions to address the areas identified of underperformance. All 5 scrutiny committees have reviewed the performance reports, and each of them have noted them in turn. So the report seeks Cabinet's considerations of their views, which was to note it. And in addition, Cabinet is requested to note the overall service performance results to date, progress made towards achieving those priorities of the annual delivery plan in relation to coronavirus. There are reports within this, talks about the background, talks about the priorities, talks about the acts under which we act. Appendix A outlines the performance for the period, April to June. Section 1 talks about the overall RAG performance. Sections 2 to 5 provides an overview of the progress of each of the 4 corporate plan wellbeing objectives. And then finally, Appendix 1 that provides by wellbeing objectives detailed information relating to the service plans. So that's the down in the bowls of where we work from. And Appendix 2 provides detailed performance linked to each of the wellbeing objectives. And then finally, Section 6 provides a link to the 5 presentations covered by all scrutiny committees. But as I said, each of the scrutiny committees received their copies of their reports and simply noted the progress to date. So we have recommendations, and they are that Cabinet consider performance results and progress towards achieving the annual delivery plan for 21-22 commitments as aligned to our corporate plan wellbeing objectives as presented in this report and appendices. The Cabinet considers the views and recommendations of all scrutiny committees in relation to quarter 1 results and approve identified remedies. Well, they didn't have any because they obviously noted them as a basis to address areas of underperformance and to tackle those key challenges identified. And as I said earlier, this report does have those within the overall structure. And the Cabinet notes the progress being made through the recovery strategy in response to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Basically, this is a report tells you where we are. Scrutiny could be happy with it. Clearly we have some work to be done, but clearly there are some obstacles in the way in doing some of those work too. So they're the recommendations. I formally would move them. I don't know if anybody's got any comments to make in relation to each or any of them. Liz.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I just wanted to refer to the learning and skills part or learning culture part of the report. And it's always easy to sort of say, oh well, we're on track with our 21st century schools, and we've given out lots of IT devices and everything. But actually what I would like to draw attention to is paragraph 322 on page 12, where we talk about what do we need to improve. Because, you know, the previous section was talking about, you know, all the things we've done, but actually for me, this section talks about the how we need to recognise that there's an urgent need for our schools to be providing support for young people that are experiencing sort of acute anxiety and other social, emotional and mental health needs. And there will be a report coming to Cabinet, either next Cabinet or one afterwards, talking about that. And that when I spoke to the sort of collective school councils for schools, this is one of the things that young people raised. And we are certainly looking at that, looking at how young people can re-engage and catch up on learning during lockdowns. Again, we're working with schools, and the summer fun programme was hugely successful in terms of providing an opportunity for children to get out and about, meet friends and learn new things. We know that we're seeing an increase in demand for additional learning needs provision, and we are working towards that. And we also know that there's been an impact. The jargon is positive education destinations. It's basically what happens to children post 16, and it, you know, do we are we supporting them to either continue in education, employment or training of some sort? And we know at the moment that's gone up from 1.5 to 3% of children that aren't doing something. And again, that's something that we will be working on. I suppose the message is, as far as we're concerned, there's no child is going to be left behind, and we will certainly be focusing on those areas. And I'm also very happy to second the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else want to make any comments? It is quite positive in fairness, and the challenges are still there. You know, we've still got high COVID levels, particularly in schools, with the younger generation. Thankfully, it isn't leading to many hospitalizations as such, or serious hospitalizations anyway, although there are still some. Okay, well, if there's nobody else is going to say anything, then we agree then, I think. Yeah, good, thank you. Next item is for the report of the Cabinet Member of Housing and Building Services. It's in relation to Housing Development Programme Homeview Phase 2, Scoma Road in Barry. Margaret. So this is a part one report. Good morning.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you. This is advise the Cabinet of a report later on in the agenda to seek approval of submit a detailed planning application, tender and enter in contracts for the housing development scheme known as Homeview Phase 2. The report brings to the attention of Cabinet a proposal to develop 31 new council homes on land at Homeview Scoma Road. The scheme represents the second phase of the new council housing provision, with phase 1 scheme of 11 new homes being successfully completed on the 10th of May 21. We want to move forward as soon as possible because of all the people that's on the waiting list, and especially in Giddensdown, who needs these extra homes.
Yep.
The scheme lays out the Appendix 1 and 2 and 3. You can see the layout, and it's for houses, apartments and adapted homes.
Yeah.
So there's only 2 recommendations, and the Cabinet notes the proposal to approve new council housing development of 31 homes, including apartments, family housing and adapted bungalows.
Yeah.
The Cabinet notes the request to take formal decisions, and we have a part 2 later on in the agenda, so there'll be more details there. So I'm recommending that we accept this report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll formally second. We'll take it under part 2. It's good. It's very, very good news. As I say, part 1 phase is brilliant. and we were lucky to go and see it. So phase 2, I'm looking forward to. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll move to the next one, which is again a housing external refurbishment of leaseholder 17 blocks leaseholder blocks scheme. So Margaret, again over to you, and I think this is a part 1 report and there's a part 2 to come to.
Yeah. Thank you, Leader. This report brings to the attention of Cabinet the need to award the Housing External Refurbishment Leaseholders 17 Block Scheme Contract 21-22. The report details the principle of the award and is for noting with finance information. And there is a part 2, and it is only one recommendation that the Cabinet notes the contents of this report and will be taking the part 2 later on in the agenda.
That's fine. So we'll take into decisions on the contract details within part 2 later. That's fair enough. Straightforward. Part 1 report will take part 2 later. Thanks very much. I'll formally second that. Is everybody happy with that? Good. In that case, we'll come to the next one, which is item 13, which is housing, heating, installation services and maintenance framework for 22 to 25. Margaret.
Thank you, Leader. This report brings to the attention of the Cabinet the proposal and award of the housing, heating, instalment, servicing and maintenance framework for 22 to 25. This report seeks delegation authority for the Director of Environment and Housing Services and the Head of Finance in consultation with the Cabinet member, myself, and to accept the best tender for this contract. So there is 3 recommendations as you'll see them, and there is quite a few there that the authority will be given to the tendering value for money and framework. Well, of course, we should do that, shouldn't we? So, and then the other recommendations. So I'll go with those recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Margaret. I think it's important to realise the current contract expires in early January 2020. So we've got to go to tender.
Yes.
The value for money framework contract through South to Wales. We'll also then delegate the authority, as you said, to yourselves. And we delegate the authority to the monitoring officer, head of legal.
You've gone on mute, Neil.
Why does he do that? Why does he do that? No reason why. That's my arm nudges the mouse. No, that's good. We've given the authority to tender the value through South to Wales. We've given you the delegation, and we also delegate the monitoring officer to execute the contract once it's completed. But it is important to realise that it does expire in January 2022, so we need to get on with doing the tendering exercise. Yeah. Good. Thank you very much, Margaret. Is everybody happy with that? I'll have you the second. Good. Okay. Thank you. The next item is item 14, which is a review of the Youth Cabinet and participation structures. And Catherine, I think you're taking this one, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Leader. I'm really happy to be able to bring this report to Cabinet today because I'm really focused on making sure that as many young people can be involved in the democratic process, how it works, their knowledge, their understanding, so they are fully equipped to deal with it throughout the rest of their life. I'm assuming that everyone has had time to read the report, but for those of us who haven't, the Youth Cabinet currently works on the basis that you are required to be a member of the Vale Youth Forum to be able to be elected as a member of the Youth Cabinet. And unfortunately, we've kind of got to a point where there aren't enough people who are engaged with the Vale Youth Forum to be able to allow this to facilitate itself correctly. And the young people themselves are actually the ones who came forward and said that we want to find a better way. We want more people to be involved in this process. We want more people to understand what's going on. So in between the officers and the young people, they did various different analysis and consultations, and you can refer to these in Appendix A of this report, so you can actually see what the young people stated. If you look at section 2.2, then it explains again how we came to this decision and what was going on around it. So from our point of view here, we absolutely have a responsibility as a local authority itself to encourage and facilitate as many people to be involved in this process as we can. There are two, before I say that, we have received a late representation today from trustees of the Vale Youth Forum, and we note the comments that they made, and I'm satisfied that this is absolutely the best way forward for now. Recommendations are before Cabinet that we change the current Youth Cabinet constitution to remove the requirement for young people to be solely members of the Vale Youth Forum to enable them to be elected to the Youth Cabinet. We will now then consider the proposal to develop Vale Big Voice Forum to support wider access to participation and opportunities for young people. This means that people have got more than one way to get into the systems that we're looking at, being able to encourage them into our democratic process, which is really so important for them these days. And I would ask Cabinet to consider those proposals today, please.
Okay, thank you. Ben, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think it's a really timely report. I think we're heading into another election where more young people are going to be able to participate in the democratic process next May. I think that as this has come from those young people who are involved and engaged, and we're seeking to widen involvement, it shouldn't be to the discount or detriment of any current system. I think this is everyone's interested in improving things, so I'm very happy to second the proposals and hope that what comes out at the end of these conversations is something that everyone can get behind and understand that young people want to be involved. We also want to make sure that involvement is constructive and that people, young people feel that there is a value to them being involved. We don't want to just create another layer of administration to deal with this, but this is about opening up as much as we can to have young people more involved and to represent their views and so that we can consider them. And pre-COVID, we had joint cabinet meetings with the youth cabinet, and we spent time listening to their views, and they've helped us to appreciate and understand where we are. And I think it can only be a positive thing to expand that and to have an even wider footprint of young people who can get involved with the council.
Okay, thank you. I know that I had representations in 1:30, which made some comments, and I went back to them and said, because it was to me personally, and I said, are you happy for us to share it at Cabinet? And they are. So, but bearing in mind the fact that this report's now been along for a long time, we've talked about the fact that young people have been involved in the consultation process for this. We feel it probably is best to continue. It was from 2 trustees. There's no reason why we want to have discussions with those going forward with this, because they're still within the chart itself, the Youth Forum, and their comments will be, I think, appended to the minutes. That's probably the easiest way of doing this, so that there's clear transparency in what was said. But I think we need to continue on a way forward. Things of coronavirus hasn't helped, but saying that, it is difficult to get people involved. So that hopefully this, through the big voice, would be able to do that. Peter, you want? Yeah. Peter,
if I could, Lee, just pick up on something that Councillor Gray said, and that is, when we were able to hold our joint cabinet meetings with the younger people, I particularly appreciated that perspective and shedding of light from a group that I would not necessarily have input from. So I would very much like to see it restored. So that's just my comment.
Okay, and I think this is the views of the youth cabinet too. So, okay, so the recommendations are that the cabinet agrees to the change of the current youth cabinet constitution to remove the requirement for young people to be members of the Vale Youth Forum. Doesn't mean to say they're excluded from it. To enable them to be elected to the youth cabinet. That the cabinet considers the proposal to develop a Vale Big Voice Forum to support wider access to participation and opportunities for young people across the Vale of Glamorgan. So they're the recommendations. They're the formal recommendations. We are happy with those, please. We've had a mover and seconder, and okay. In that case, we will move forward. Thank you very much. Item 15 is, have I anything under part 1 which is urgent? No, I do not. So I will be going into closed part 2 session. And the reason we're doing that is we have items for discussion under part 2, which follow on from earlier reports of today's agenda. These are matters that are considered to be confidential for a particular reason. We need to move into a private session where confidential matters can be discussed under part 2. Therefore, I will ask the Cabinet officers to stop the recording and the streaming of this open session and ensure that no members of the public are present after this juncture, and only allow the relevant parties to remain to hear the detail of the items to be discussed. Following the meeting, the outcome of the part 2 discussions will be formally captured as part of the minutes of the meeting, advising all parties of the final decision of the Cabinet for this item. So can I ask the Democratic officers to please stop the recording and stop the live streaming, and make sure that there is no one else on the call that shouldn't be.